Environmental Secretary Steve Reed proudly announced they are backing regulator Ofwat, who will make sure that water companies will be investing $88 billion. He says that this will clean up our waters. He then said that companies will be on special notice and may face criminal charges, and he banned on bonuses if they don't meet standards. However, this isn't the good news that is being portrayed by the government. Steve Reed shared a newspaper article on his Twitter account. The Labour government will secure the biggest ever investment to fix our broken water system, boosting economic growth and creating thousands of jobs across the country as we clean up our polluted waterways. Now, the newspaper clipping shows headlines that clean water is coming. Within the image he shared is where the money is going to come from. The government is backing plans by the regulator Ofwat for an $88 billion spending package by water utilities between 2025 and 2030, initially funded by the city or through borrowing, and then recovered through higher customer bills. Yes, that's right. Private companies who make a profit off providing natural resources to us, I say providing, don't give out for the goodness of their heart. They want a return on investment, and one of the ways they're going to do that is to charge us more. Now, the source of those article images was from the Daily Mail. Labour won't end the disastrous privatisation, despite the fact that the majority of people support public ownership, and they're now celebrating private investment. But we've got to pay for it. I mean, we were told that this government is going to lower bills, and they lied. Privatisation, look, it's something you cannot fix. There's no other solution than nationalisation. So I want to talk about this latest announcement from Steve Reed, as we covered at the beginning of the show. He's now happy that we've got £90 billion worth of private investment into our water. And obviously the idea is that there's so much money, it's going to be used to clean up all the shit that was, by the way, neglected because we have a privatised system. And it turns out how it's going to be paid for is us. They're going to use higher bills to pay for it, which is insane. And the fact that Steve Reed tweeted that with that in one of the newspaper clippings, he didn't even realise that, is insane to me. I mean, I want to get your take on all of this.
We are, I think, one of two countries, maybe one of three in the entire world who has privatized water and sewage. It's absolutely just ridiculous. If we want to talk about how to fund the water system without charging us, The Guardian reported in 2020, I think it was, that since 1991, since the companies were privatized, they've handed out £51 billion in dividends. That's just dividends. That's not bonuses either. That doesn't include the bonuses. So if we divide that up, that's about £3 billion a year. So it's 2024 now. So we're looking at about £70 billion since they got privatized. There's the money. There it is right there. And on top of that, because the system wouldn't have been for profit, we wouldn't have had people getting bonuses. We wouldn't have people having, like massive, big fat, CEO salaries and all of that. All of that money could have been going into the system. But now, because of those actions from decades past, we are ultimately, again, going to have to pay for it. And these companies are going to continue to have dividends. I think they mentioned right in the article that, they could be punished by not getting their bonuses and stuff like that. They will still get their dividends. They can't stop them from going out. They will still get those dividends, £3 billion a year. And again, we're going to continue to have to clean up the mess of past Tory governments from before I was born. It's just a joke. This country is a constant joke. The best thing to do over the long term would be to simply renationalise. We're doing it obviously with the trains by letting the contracts lapse. I don't know how it works. Is it just a straight buyback? Is there contracts that are going to lapse? I have no idea, but we have to do something. Obviously, I appreciate Keir has just come into power. Labour have come into power, right? If they say we can't afford it right now, I can accept that argument. But why not create an argument about we're going to take it back in the next 10 years? Because I'm sure there is a way to pay for it. Because right now, what's happening is that obviously the water bills are going to go up. We're still putting shit into the rivers. Another thing that's happened is that the price of bottled water is absolutely soared throughout the country because people obviously don't want to drink the tap water. So not only that, are people paying, the water bill might be £30-40 a month. People are now having to spend even more money by buying bottles of water, which, firstly, the logistics of carrying water in trucks alone contributes so much to CO2, the amount that it takes to transport that, and on top of that, the amount of plastic as well. So it has so many secondary effects just because they're putting shit into our rivers, because they got nationalized, and now we're going to have to pay for it. And we're just going to continue to have to pay the cost for, I don't know, God knows how long.
But you listen to the Labour right, for example, and they've always said, well, nationalisation is ideological. And I know it's not just the Labour right. A lot of people, the mainstream pundits, the client journalists, the conservatives, they say it's ideological to support nationalisation. And particularly from the Blairites, they say we don't want to use ideological policies. We just want to make things work for people. We want to improve lives for workers and everybody. Well, I tell you what, increasing bills, your water bills, is not improving your life, it's making it worse. But also, privatisation is ideological. It's never worked. We're seeing the worst of it today, and the only way to get out of this is nationalisation. And they like to talk about, well, it costs so much money to put things back into public ownership. How much is it costing us now? Now, the reason why there is shit in our waters, why it's so disgusting, is because private companies want to make a profit off of this public service. They don't give money just for nothing, right? They're going to want a return on investment. The problem with that is when you have a privatized system, like the railways famously, they are de-invested. And it comes to a point where they're not safe anymore because private companies are not incentivized to put the amount of investment needed. They're always going to take some sort of profit off of it. Now, the cost also comes onto the consumer, which is really funny when Steve Reed's like, "Well, we're gonna charge all these companies that do a bad job," it kind of reminds me of Hillary Clinton in 2016 when she's like, "I went to Wall Street and I told them to cut it out." You cannot change the behavior of these people because it's embedded into the profit motive on a monopolistic system like privatization. So this is never going to be fixed. And the fact that they don't even want to subsidize the costs to the taxpayer in terms of water bills, it means we're getting literally nothing for this. I don't care if there's going to be £100 billion worth of investment going into our water or our public services when we're footing the bill, even though we've been ripped off. And privatization, again, it's like paying for it twice. You're paying for the service to be run, then you're paying for the profit on top, and then when they eventually don't invest, there's a huge cash injection from the private sector, who then obviously push that costs onto people. How does this mean? Please tell me how the Labour Party are the grown-ups here when they're literally making people's lives worse by increasing the bills, whilst also keeping this very, very ideologically driven policy of privatisation in place.
Just want to shout out to Pancaking on in the comments because he called Steve Reed a div. Absolutely, as a person from Leeds, I absolutely love that word. So thank you very much. But yeah, the idea that it's ideological and it's not. It's just simply practical, right? The country would run better where our main systems are nationalized. And you know what? I'm not necessarily a capitalist, but the best that we can probably do with the system that we currently have is that we nationalize the systems in the country that we need, right? We have water, transportation, obviously things like education, health, all of these things, they can be fully under the control of the government and then, you know, regulated capitalism, because that's probably the best that we can hope for right now as a practical next step. I'm not talking about what I want for the entire future, but that could be a very easy practical next step. But we don't have that. It doesn't make any sense not to control an industry that is sufficient to human life within this country. It's ridiculous. And again, the cost is just being passed on to us. There are no grown-ups in the room. Again, if they want to make the argument that they can't afford it, just put it on the list for later. I can accept that argument. But again, it's also affecting other industries, because there have been tons of organizations out there who do holidays, activities on lakes and waters when it comes to the summertime. A lot of them haven't been able to function. It's actually I even saw a report a few weeks ago that's saying that it's making more people go abroad and spend their money abroad because they don't want to go and swim in our rivers and lakes in this country.
I mean, I certainly wouldn't swim in our rivers. And would it be nice to actually have a proper public sphere, which we don't really have? I mean, maybe people don't go abroad as much. Maybe they would like to have more holidays here and swim in our seas, but we don't want to do that because it's disgusting. And to sort of echo what we were talking about before at the beginning of the show of patriotism, there's nothing more patriotic than private companies, than CEOs who probably don't even live in this country, making money off of a human right in this country. Doesn't seem very patriotic at all. I think nationalisation is far more patriotic than anything else. But, I mean, going forward, there's nothing the Labour Party can really do. I mean, how are they going to deliver on the promises they say they will, which is improve the lives to workers and to bring down bills? They're not doing that. They're going against that idea. I mean, essentially, if you don't nationalize our industries, it's kicking the can down the road. And also to talk about cost, for example, right? I know obviously you say, oh, it's a lot of money. I would accept it maybe if they did it later down the line. I mean, I wouldn't even accept that, because you have to think of the costs that come embedded into the privatization of water, for example. If you have unclean water, people are going to get sick. And what happens there? People have to go to the doctors. They have to use our health service. So the multiplier effect from this is actually more expensive for the government. And also when you have pipes, for example, that aren't being upgraded, the infrastructure is just dying and withering away because private capital doesn't want to invest in it. That's another emergency expenditure the government has to do. So no one's willing to make that argument, it seems, in the mainstream, that actually, yes, we could spend a lump sum buying these people out, which, by the way, you ask me, we should nationalise without compensation. These people are crooks, they're criminals. But even if we had to compensate them, the cost is actually far cheaper than keeping what we have now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's okay. You're fine. You've won me over. Okay, I want it. I want it now. I don't want it later. I'm still on that side where I feel like, despite if they continue criticizing the government in power, the government of the day, I'm still kind of in that phase of we need to give them a time, see what they're doing. Some things that they've done have been okay. Obviously, over the last few weeks, we've been very unhappy about a lot of other things. But no, you're right. It should be something that's a priority right now. I actually know people who got sick from the water down there. Was it Devon when they went on holiday? Again, yeah, costing our NHS money. Really great point. That system is already being strangled as well. But almost tying it back into what we were saying a second ago about the idea of like people not wanting to go on holidays. Part of that as well is down to another form of nationalisation that we don't currently have, but it's going to be coming on the way, is the trains, right? People don't want to spend 300 quid on a train ticket from Leeds to Cornwall because it's just cheaper to go abroad. And people now, even more, don't want to spend any more money in this country because they can't go for a swim anywhere. They can't they can't dip in a lake, they can't swim in a river, they can't go paddleboarding just in case they fall in and get some of that lovely bacteria up their nose that's going to make them sick. The country is just a mess, and it just doesn't seem like there's any practical plans to actually fix a lot of the things that should actually be a priority. And it's just going to continue this way because, the government have got a big black hole that's just appeared out of nowhere. And again, they're going to continue to prioritize other things. They're going to continue to prioritize being pro-business by not scaring off the private companies. Because again, if they went after the water industries too aggressively, it could scare. They could argue it's going to scare off other business. That's probably what they're scared of. Because if we went after those £3 billion a year on dividends that's been handed out to those people, if we actually dived into that company and was like, you can't give out dividends, other companies could be like, oh, they're telling us not to give out dividends to anyone, and that's going to scare off business. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but that's probably what's going through their pro-business head.
Definitely wouldn't happen. If they want to go, there's the door.
Absolutely. But that's what they're scared of, probably, isn't it? Right? They don't want to upset the private sector by being too aggressive.
But it's also not. It's not extremely. It's not a left-wing position to have public ownership of utilities. It's something that we used to do. It's something a pretty.
But it's something that everybody else does in the world as well.
It's a moderate social democratic thing to do. We used to have nationalized industries, and the majority of people support it. Even majority of conservative voters support it. I mean, people buy into the idea of competition in the capitalist system. Fine when it comes to things that aren't a necessity, but when it's a monopoly power, You can't have competition. It's not how it works. So it's a real failure of, I would say, so-called progressive governments. It's a failure of Blair for taking on the Thatcherite agenda. It's a failure of Keir Starmer and his front bench to really challenge this basic thing that when a human needs, when we have resources, that is a human right, essentially, water, right? These, one, shouldn't be at the whims of profit making, but two, when it's a monopolistic service, it doesn't work anyway. This is what we end up with. And guess what? People predicted this decades ago. They knew it was going to happen, but they just allow it to happen anyway. Go on.
I was just going to quickly say one more thing as well, because it's this idea of, Thatcher's, privatization will create competition, the capitalist dream, right? It cannot work in many systems. It can't work in water. If anybody in the comment section right now, anybody want to ring me up, text me, tweet me, whatever, and tell me how I can change my water provider, because you can't. There is no competition. It's them or nothing. And today I got a train from London to Leeds. There's one train I can get on LNER, and there's 2 routes, but they both go the same way.
And how was your train journey, by the way?
Oh, wow, thank you for asking. Actually, 2 trains before mine got cancelled, so I had to sit on the floor for 2.5 hours because there was no space on the train because 2 of them got cancelled. But again, do you know what? In a beautiful capitalistic world, Curtis, because capitalism's the best, I could have just jumped on the competitor's train, right? No, because it doesn't exist. LNER have that one line. They own that line. Nobody else does that route. It's as simple as that from London to Leeds.
To use a personal anecdote here, I went travelling back in 2018, and I used the European train system. Absolutely fantastic. I remember I think I was going to Prague, and I had my own booth, right? Not just my own seat, my own booth. It was superb. It was on time. It was clean. It was cheap. And this is the non-utopian, not radical world we could have today.
I had the exact same experience. I was talking about this today while I was complaining about the trains with the people on the train. Is that I went interrailing when about 8-9 years ago.
Well, that's the same thing I did back in 2018. Yeah, it was 2018. It was interrailing. Yeah.
I was 2016, and a train from Amsterdam to Berlin. Lovely little booth to myself. No pre-reserved seat, just walked in, got this lovely little booth. The ticket was £30. It was a 6-hour train ride. Now, if somebody wants to tell me how long a 6-hour train ride can get you, I think from London to Edinburgh, it's about 5 hours. If I were to book that for next week, that would probably be anything from £100 to £300, depending on the demand. But right now, if you go on Trainline right now, go on your little app and search Amsterdam to Berlin for next week, it'll be around £30 to £40. It's absolutely insane that the difference in prices across Europe, because we pursued this route of privatization, which has not just completely failed, but it was just utterly absurd, and it was never going to work.
I'm excited to say that Turn Left has significantly grown this year, and with that, we've managed to produce far more ambitious content, interviewing high-profile people. We did a 12-hour live election show. There are multiple people behind Turn Left, but we are still working around our full-time work. But we would love it if this was our full-time. It means we could dedicate so much more and to bring even more ambitious content. So if you've been here from the beginning, or you've only recently become a viewer, if you like what we do, then you can help us out. Please like and share this video. Make sure you drop a comment. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear your feedback. And we desperately need more independent media. If you want to see a socialist media alternative thrive, then you could be part of that. So if you can, you could support us on Patreon for £3 or £5 per month, or any one-off donation. We can use that money to upgrade our equipment, to rent out a proper studio, and to start paying ourselves. This is only the beginning. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Patreon.com, Turn Left Media. Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you, Turn Left.